set. Evening, I'll call the November Plan and Zoning meeting to order. The first item on is to approve tonight's agenda. However, I would like to make one change to the agenda if we could, and that's to move number 8, which is a recommendation of the mayor and town council on the draft water and sewer manual. I'd like to move that up after we get through the review and approval of the minutes, just since Larry's here from town council and this is his baby, and I'd like to, while he's invited to stay for the other items on the agenda, I won't make him stay till the end for that. So if we're okay with that, is there, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Move approval of the change.
Second.
Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the ayes have it. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the July 10th minutes from the Planning and Zoning Comprehensive Plan. I think those were sent out. Do we have any comments or we need to discuss on those? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the July 10th meeting? Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next on the agenda is approval of the September 11th minutes from the Planning and Zoning Comprehensive Plan work session. Those were also sent out. Any comments? Motion to approve. Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next is the approval of the October 9th minutes from the Planning and Zoning Water Sewer Manual work session. I believe, were those sent out as well? I believe.
On the back page.
Okay, any comments?
I would just like to make one comment.
Okay.
I wasn't here, but I did my homework and watched the YouTube, which was enlightening. But I really appreciated Mr. Jaworski coming in, and you know, it was an intelligent conversation. It was an important topic, so I'm glad I actually had the opportunity to watch it on YouTube. So on that, I will move approval, and I will actually vote on this because I watched it on YouTube.
Good.
I usually don't vote when I'm not here, but I will on this one.
Is there a second to approve those minutes from the work session? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The ayes have it. The minutes from the Planning and Zoning Water and Sewer Manual work session are approved. And so next is the Town Chesapeake Beach, Maryland Water and Sewer Manual. We do have Larry here. Would you like to, any comments based on what happened at the last meeting? And I apologize for not being able to make it. There was a lot going on.
It was a good discussion. Thank you for those that were here for your input. Just in the way of background, understand that this has been a very long process. We've been working on this now for 2.5 years. And it's a work group that's consisted of Chris has been involved, Holly, Connie, Jay, John at the treatment plant, Paul Woodburn, just a whole bunch of people. And it's been a very long, arduous process. And as people review this, they have asked, could you send me a marked up copy? And my response typically has been, you don't want to see that. It's just too confusing to follow at this point. There's just been too many changes made to the document. It's better just to read it fresh. So with that, I'll just entertain any comments or questions that you may have.
I don't have any. Was there anything, like you said, was there anything since you were not able to participate?
With the level of detail you went into in that meeting and the questions you asked would have been ones I would have asked. I think all of them were answered appropriately, and I appreciate all of the work that you do for this city, well, the town, I should call it, and especially on this particular issue, which usually most people don't want to deal with, but it's an important one, and you address also the idea that climate change is going to affect the flooding, which could affect the entire impact of this, situation. So I think what you're doing is really important. So we thank you. I thank you.
Thank you.
Good to have a civil engineer on town council.
Yes, it's very important.
Honestly, don't know what I was thinking when I volunteered to take this on. So.
Yes, exactly.
I also appreciate all the detail that went into this, and I agree that this needs to be done. I was wondering about a couple things. I was kind of comparing it to other water and sewer plans. I was wondering why the cap on, I guess, impact fees. I'll have to look up. You know, in the schedule of fees, you have a no greater than $7,000 and no greater than $5,000 for one, for example. And I was just wondering why we chose to cap it. Because I know for households, I think I looked up, and you can tell me if I'm right or not, it'll be about $4,000 or $5,000 to pay the plumber to hook it up. Is that what you're?
As I remember the number, yes.
Yeah.
But to answer your question,
Mhm.
whenever one tries to work on a document like a water and sewer manual, and
Mhm.
Chris can attest to this as well, you're trying to strike a balance between protecting the environment, protecting the town's investments,
Mhm.
while at the same time wanting to not discourage economic development.
Sure.
So you don't want to put too high of a number on potential economic development within the town while still protecting the environment and the town's investments in the water and sewer system.
Okay, and so that leads to my second question. So in the picture of development, I know, you know, the water sewer is talked about a lot in the planning realm as something that can kind of direct, limit, or encourage growth. So how is the council seeing this in the big picture of growth? Maybe you could, you know, what is it going to allow the capacity for? What is kind of the goal for that growth?
And Chris can answer this as well, but my feeling on this is that we are really not encouraging additional residential development in the town. You know, the honest answer is, where would it go?
That's my thought.
You know, other than by annexation, which my sense is does not appear to be any interest in annexation to the town at this point. So within the boundaries of the current town, with the exception of our current development in the Heritage, there really isn't a whole lot of space for new development. There is space for redevelopment. And the water and sewer manual would sort of allow that within certain constraints of what's intended to be put in there. Chris, anything to add to that?
I would only say that this document is really about how the service of providing water and sewer is administered in a staff day-to-day type of function. And it's less about growth policy and more about how we actually make connections, how we treat residents fairly when there are issues or bills are not paid on time, and how do we extend services to deal with failing systems, and sort of sets a set of rules and guidelines. But it really says very little about zoning or development or actual growth per se.
Yeah, actually, the effort that you all have been working on for quite a while now on the comprehensive plan is the driver of future development within the town,
Sure.
not the water and sewer manual.
I guess my point is maybe those caps might not belong there, given that individual households that would be very stressed would have to pay quite a bit out of their personal finances, whereas, you know, presumably redevelopment would equal somebody making money and might not be as burdensome on them. And maybe even the income could offset some of the people that are going to be forced to make the hookup.
If I understand your question correctly, I believe the new appendix that we're adding, Appendix C, which is the hardship exemption form, would allow a vehicle for that person to at least say, this is a hardship on me.
This is my situation. I'm asking for some consideration.
Right. It gives them a path to say, this is why this is difficult for me to accept.
Sure.
And that wasn't in there. We had no hardship exemption form in there before.
And I think that's a great addition, and that's awesome that you guys thought of that.
Yep.
Do we have any comments from the public with regards to this? Just wanted to check. I know you were back there hiding behind Larry.
Yeah.
I didn't want to miss you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your consideration
you,
on this
Larry.
too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that being said, they would like us to provide a recommendation, and I'm supportive of the water and sewer manual as it's drafted. And again, it's not ours to adopt or anything, but I think it's at a state where I'm comfortable with it as from my role in planning and zoning. I think y'all are probably along. Again, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I would like to do is put it up for a recommendation, and I'd like to see a motion to that planning and zoning recommends forwarding this or endorsing the draft water and sewer manual to town council.
Well, I'll make that motion that we forward the draft water and sewer manual for, with our recommendation that it be adopted by the town.
Is there a second?
Second, that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. The ayes have it. So the minutes will state that we endorsed the draft plan, and that'll be forwarded over to town council.
Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work. I know
Matt.
you spent a lot of time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, or getting back to the agenda, is to accept Charlie Fink's letter of resignation from the Planning Commission. I'm not sure that we have anything to vote on or accept, but just for the record, I'll read it for the record. And it was dated October 8th, 2019. This email serves as my resignation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. My understanding is that I am not permitted to serve on this commission now that I am on town council. In any case, I don't believe I could devote the time necessary to give both roles a full effort. It has been a true pleasure to serve on this commission, and I wish them all the best moving forward. Please do not hesitate to contact me with any questions. Thank you, Charlie Fink. And I know me personally, I do appreciate Charlie's time on the commission because he was a valued member, and he gave a lot of good counsel to me individually when I'd see him out walking along he'd pop down to my house sometimes, and we'd have a chat and just to kind of bounce ideas off one another. And so it was nice to have his counsel. He was missed, but like he says, he's in another important role. He's hardly not serving the town. So I wish him all the best on town council. Next on the agenda is a discussion about parks and open spaces. I'm going to turn that over to Chris. We had some audiovisual technical difficulties, so we have a hard copy. Everybody should have a hard copy in front of them. And I'll kind of turn this discussion over to Chris for a little while, and we'll talk through it.
It's more of a bare bones hard copy without benefit of a lot of the maps that I would typically be showing. But nevertheless, we can get through it. Before we do, I wanted to mention that I've been in contact with the Critical Area Commission,
Maryland
Critical Area Commission, and I sent to them the draft maps on sea level rise and the text that we wrote and notated where the Planning Commission had comments. I don't want them to see that and think that's what your work product is, but they know that, they understand that. So I'm working with the staff. Chesapeake Beach has gone further in this area than any municipality in Maryland. And they're impressed with what we're doing and want to track it. And they understand, like I think you do, and like I've mentioned before, that their rules and regulations for development and redevelopment in the critical area are going to lose their potency pretty soon as water rises. For instance, it may not make sense anymore to require a landscaped buffer yard between a building or a sidewalk and the water when sea level rise is going to come up. Maybe it makes sense, after all, to actually do filling in the critical area buffer to protect what's behind it. You know, all these things are anathema to the way the current critical area laws are written. And they realize that we are entering a phase of rethinking those rules. Now, they're holding a seminar or class on critical area regulations November 20th. And I'm going to go to it, and I think they're going to start introducing this topic. And some of the things that we've sent to them may actually inform what they say at that meeting. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And I think,
How does that relate to living shoreline?
what's that?
How does that relate to their living shoreline?
Well, yeah, it's going to be hard to have living shorelines. And
Because it was always kind of, that would be that.
What have we sent them?
the land use draft that on sea level rise, the maps that showed where sea level rise will be in 2050 and 2100, and where flood occurrence will be at the 1%, 10%, and 0.2% flood events. And then just inventory background information, where the floodplain actually is now and where flooding events occur.
They're appreciative of the fact that we're exploring where those potential limits are.
Yeah, and open to the idea that over the next, I say a decade, but it's going to be a decade of figuring out how to deal with this, and trial and error. But obviously, they don't want to wait a decade. They want to get ahead of the curve as the main regulatory agency in the state. So this type of information helps them, informs them how to proceed in this area. So who knows? Maybe we see them again. Maybe they come to a meeting and offer testimony when it comes time to adopt the comprehensive plan and offer some advice to the planning commission. But I just wanted to mention that your work product is sort of making it to the state, and they're interested in it. One element of the comprehensive plan is community facilities, and one of the most important community facilities are parks. And I think this is a especially relevant and important topic in Chesapeake Beach, where, as Lori would say, recreation is an industry or an element of our economic development, and where we don't have a lot of land to do classical parks, and that parks themselves sort of have to do double duty as recreational resources or regional resources for people who might come to town to do nature walks or birding or kayaking and like biking. So that infrastructure has been being built in Chesapeake Beach for decades now, little by little, gradually. And when we think about a plan for parks in the context of a comprehensive plan, we sort of start thinking generally about where they're located and where our needs are. But we can also start thinking about how they support the larger economic development strategy about creating a regional destination for tourism. So recreational tourism. So I would ask, obviously, you keep that in mind. I think Lori obviously keeps that in mind. She's leading on that topic. And but I'm going to start with kind of the basics on basic parks. And we always start with the standards and national standards of National Recreation and Park Association publishes standards on various levels of parks. They actually look at three main levels: a mini park, which is a tot lot, if you will, neighborhood park, and a community level park. And then there's a fourth version, which is not so much a park as, in the sense that it's not providing just classic park functions, but it's providing resource conservation function too. And that's a natural resource area. Now, we've got all of these in town to some degree. And we're deficient in some areas, and we're okay in some of the areas. And I thought I'd take you through a summary of where we are in the town. But just to clarify terms, a mini park is one that serves a concentrated or limited population or special group. It's typically a tot lot in a neighborhood You can walk there, or push a stroller there, or it's attached to a senior center and it can easily be part of a walking trail system. But it's small and it fits right into a niche within the neighborhood. We don't have these at all in town, except for the tot lot, which is down here next to Kellum's Field. There are no tot lots anywhere else. Even in the private development communities, while there are open spaces to some extent, there's no classic mini park or tot lot.
Well, and I know it's outside of our town limits. What would you call the one though down at the community center up in North Beach there, across from?
Oh,
Where does that fit in? Is that a?
I think that aspires to be a neighborhood park.
Does it?
Yeah,
Okay.
for a small town like North Beach.
All right. I mean, it's probably similar in size though to the tot lot down here. That's why I was curious.
Yeah, but given its location, it's not necessarily part of a neighborhood or part of a project.
Okay.
It's typically, but so they are neighborhood parks, and these are recreational and social focus of neighborhoods. As a place where kids would gather, parents would gather. Not necessarily a program space with official ball fields, but it could be. They have a service area of a quarter to a half mile. Generally, it says average person can walk there without too much difficulty. You can walk a quarter mile in 5 minutes, an average healthy person. So 10-minute, maybe 15-minute walk for a kid to get to the park, the neighborhood park. The typical size, according to national standards, is 5 to 15 acres. Of course, more dense areas typically have larger parks, if they have parks at all. A small town like Chesapeake Beach may not have parks rivaling any of these. I mean, we're talking small parks, and we'll review them in a minute. And then there's a community park, which attracts people from a much broader area, maybe the entire town or the entire town and surrounding suburbs around a town. These can be quite large in size, and you're looking at 5 to 8 acres per 1,000 population. We sort of get to a bigger size park with higher level facilities, maybe picnic pavilions or amphitheaters, your classic village green park with athletic centers attached to a really large thing. But then there's the last thing is natural resource area. And of course, Chesapeake Beach has Bayside Park and Brownies Beach. And so that is the classic example of a resource area park. And I think we've got that covered. In addition to that, there are other types of parks in town. So let's go to this next slide. Can you read it okay? The font is small. It was going to be projected on the wall, so it's it just summarizes kind of what I said. We can skip the mini park because we know where it is. It's Gordon Stinnett Boulevard, and it's 0.8 acres in size. Neighborhood parks. We have a park in Richfield Station on Sandsbury Drive. There's actually 2 parcels. One is an open space parcel, and one has the courts. There's a tennis court and a basketball court, and actually one of the tennis courts has been converted to a hockey court, sort of hockey place. So that's 3 acres total, and that includes some hillside open space as well, and that probably not very usable. We have Bayview Hills.
is there any public parking for use of that?
Yes,
There is public
there
parking.
is, absolutely. Yep. Right off of Sandsbury,
Okay,
right in. Probably 15 spots,
okay.
maybe 12. In Bayview Hills, Silverton Lane, this park is just over a half acre in size, and it's encircled by townhouses. So you may not ever realize it's there. It's almost like the backyards, the extended backyards of some townhouses.
Where's it at?
Yeah, see?
I've never
Bayview
seen it
Hills,
either.
Silverton
Court?
Lane.
Lane? Court? Which one is it?
Let's see if I can.
It's not, it's not kind of where they park the boats and
No,
stuff
no,
right where you
no.
jut into the trail?
No, have a look at the next page. You'll see a map.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
looking.
wow.
And you see
My
the
eyes must just be bad.
you'll see the P for park, and it's sort of smack in the middle of a little polygon shape. That's the park. It's it's 0.6 acres. Um, it has benches and a playground. And I call it non-program space. The rest of it's just green space. It's mowed.
Open, there's very little there.
Yeah, it's
We've
very
done soccer
undeveloped.
there, it's not very much going on. I'm not even sure there are any bench there. Well, there is
there
a
are
bench next to the backstop. Yeah, there is a bench there.
Is that owned by the town, maintained by the town?
Either. No, it's owned by the HOA.
And same with Richfield Station.
Yes. So the town does, these aren't your municipal parks. They're HOA parks. That being said, I don't know that they actively enforce any type of restrictions on non-residents.
Yeah, there's signs in Richfield Station.
There are signs, but like they have soccer teams from other areas coming in and whatnot to use Bayview Hills. So they're generous with their use of that field, but there's not a lot going on in that field. There's no tot lot there. There could easily be a tot lot too, but yeah.
Then there's Windward Keys, and it has its own kind of neat open space plan. It was designed as part of the community, and it features a tennis courts that are up closer to Bayside Road, or a tennis court, and a wooden boardwalk that connects it to a trail that loops through the entire community except for one missing link, which is subject of some concern there in the community right now. And there is a swimming pool, and I think some other amenities, but mostly it's just sort
It's
of
private.
space. All private and not readily accessible to the general public.
Like at all.
At all.
You,
At all.
you really don't know they're there unless you're looking at a map or you're sailing by on a boat.
Because, I mean, you can't even, can you walk back there?
No. you
I
can't
didn't-
get in, no.
I mean, we're not,
But we have.
I guess there's
to include it
nobody
on our
checking
inventory.
IDs at the front gate, but I don't think, like, I've never walked back there except when I've had a function on the pier to do vets for fishing stuff or.
It's part of
It's
a private
it's
development.
exclusive to the residents of Windward
Right.
Key.
That's
Right.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all the streets leading to it are private streets.
Okay.
It's a private development.
Okay.
There's a Chesapeake Station community has a beach. Of course, they have some other open space that's not improved at all. It just sort of slopes down to the water. But they have a small area they call a beach, and actually they're engaged with the Critical Area Commission and staff right now to see about clearing some vegetation out of that beach. It's sort of grown into it, but it's right next to the hotel, the Rod and Reel Hotel. It's literally that close to it. And the hotel kind of shadows it.
That's private as well.
Yeah, very private, absolutely.
But it's separated from the hotel by a fence, isn't it?
Yes.
So it again is a community beach.
Not a public beach, just for the residents. And then there are community parks. There's Veterans Park in Kellums Field. The Veterans Park is not so much a neighborhood park. It doesn't provide that function really. And it's really serves the entire community, but it's really small. But I classified it as a community park because of its function and its role. And it's a memorial park as well.
The X there for athletic fields by Veterans Park is a mistake.
Yes, the most egregious one. So let's cross
Unless you
that
call
out.
doing laps around the flagpole
Yeah.
exercise. There's days that might be all I can do.
Maybe waving flags is a new sport. I don't know. Well,
But it does provide access down to the water, not into the water, but to the water's edge. And then there's Kellums Field. And if you exclude the boat trailer parking and the tot lot, you're down to 7.1 acres, which is not too shabby, except that a big share of that maybe 40-50% is parking lot. Serves both the activities at the park and overflow for the water park or boats or any special event that may happen at Veterans Park, for instance, or elsewhere, July 4th and things. So it's a community level park, certainly, but its function is really set on one topic, and it's really just the athletic fields. It doesn't have much of a multiple function like a community park might.
So have you had any staff level discussions with staff here? I know the mayor reached out and was working with the county commissioner on not us, but the town acquiring that and taking it back over and changing the arrangements of that restructuring, who owns it and what that deal is. And I saw that maybe 3 weeks ago. I just wasn't sure if, does that come up? Have you been in any staff discussions here at the town regarding that, or?
I haven't been at any meetings about it, but I am aware that it was being discussed.
Okay.
I haven't been involved in
Again,
those discussions.
I don't think it probably won't be a quick process, but I do know the mayor engaged the county commissioner to expressing the desire of the town to take ownership, I think, if I remember right, back of Kellum's Field. And I don't know how that will progress, but I know certainly that's the desire of the mayor, and I would suspect town council, if, I don't think he's acting independently in that
I
matter.
saw that they made a resolution about
they?
that, right? Does anybody else know that for sure too? I feel like it went out on the,
So again,
Mayor's.
in my, I guess part of my hope would be is if we took that back over, that it would, maybe the arrangements of how that is opened up for other events, opportunities besides just football or whatever other sport happens over there. Again, I think it's underutilized by by how it's controlled right now.
But are you talking about a change in character of Kellum's Field? So it's not it could be used for other things besides an athletic field?
I think it'll always be an athletic field.
So you aren't proposing or suggesting
no,
that it
but
would be change its character or change the arrangement? Because I think some of the drawings or proposals we saw from the walkable community presentation had other designs on Kellum's Field area, if I recall
I'm
correctly.
not sure about the field
I
part. I
don't
think
think we
maybe some of
changed
the,
the field. I think we
parking
just
stuff
added some
around it.
trees and some paths around it, but
preserve the field.
from the walkable, from our group, the walkable community
Sidewalk.
advisory group, I guess,
I don't know what it's called. Officially.
the field did not change.
Well, is it only used for the Pop Warner right now? Or what is it? Is it used for anything besides football, mini football?
A couple years ago, I say a couple, my kids probably older than that. I know there used to be baseball played there. I suspect they still do. The baseball fields are still there.
haven't seen any.
There's a baseball field that games used to happen on. I suspect they probably still do.
I haven't seen it, but I think the biggest problem is that they lock those fields.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
And you can't even access,
Right.
on off times.
If you want to go out there and
Which we
kick a
should be
soccer
doing.
ball with your kid, you can't
Yeah,
get in
we
there. And
should
I
be
would,
able to access
I would hope
that.
the town would change the, if we took ownership back of that. I guess that was my point, Larry, was right now we can't you have to hop the fence at the risk of going to jail, I guess, or
Well, I'm
I
not
don't
sure we
know.
need to take ownership as much as we need to ask for permission to be able to access that on off times.
But I think
And get a
part of it is the
schedule.
town wants to own it just so we can control it and then probably maintain it differently. And then you could better incorporate that into.
That'd be the
And I would
ultimate
say
goal.
this is a great opportunity to let the town get involved and
Yeah.
actually listen to what they say they want.
Well, the town has actually said they want to take control of it. We had that in our focus groups meeting where people said, hey, we have to have that field. Now, I know it's going to be a big drainage area at some point. We need to have that open and have these fields, but certainly we need to be able to use that It seems like there's a little area in there that we could actually put in some basketball.
There's also some stormwater management and this drainage channel that sort of curves
Yeah.
through there.
Mhm.
So that would have to be reworked, but there's space for it.
But there is some space.
And I don't know to what extent baseball diamond is ever being used anymore either, and that sits there as a way of
It does, yeah.
restraining.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of extra parking too that may not be needed for a park that size and for all the activities, and that provides land for expanding those activities.
And I don't want to get you off track. I did want to make sure I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that the town has engaged the county to try to
So,
return that to the beach. And again, I think that would open up some possibilities for the town.
Think about it. What if the town wanted to have a Christmas market? You think about Christmas coming up. That would be a great place. Or ice skating rink, or just sort of year-round type of activities. It's right in the center of town. People walk on the trail to it, and yeah. Good stuff.
The question is, should we include a recommendation to that effect in the comprehensive plan?
Yes, most definitely. And I think the town is looking forward to that. Yeah, and not only for the policymakers, but it allows the town then to obtain grants from various state agencies and always look to see if it has public acceptance by being part of your comp plan.
Right.
So the more kind of forward thinking we can be, the better for those.
And I think the more areas of the comp plan that we could highlight some of the potential use and how it's incorporated in, so I think it's important to talk about it into the parks open space piece. It's important to talk about as a hub of some of the tie-in of the network of the walkability and cycling stuff, and so even town center stuff. So I think as we come back and we revisit some of these different chapters of the comp plan, I think it's important that that's a central piece that we ought to highlight in as many sections of the comp plan as we can to try to emphasize it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree.
If you just stopped
you for
with the
saying that.
parks I listed, you might think that Chesapeake Beach really has a limited number of opportunities for recreation. But that's really not the case. There are other opportunities that are not classic parks. And so I think it's important to look at those too. There's the Railway Trail, which is the walking and biking nature trail connecting Richfield Station and Bayview Hills to Kellerman's Field. There's the Chesapeake Beach Boardwalk, half mile of boardwalk along the shoreline from 14th Street south to Brownies Beach. There's the Northeast East Community Center, which has basketball courts inside and a gymnasium and playrooms and things. There's, of course, the water park. Now, that's admissions based. I mean, you have to pay a fee, but certainly it's a recreational resource for the town and for outsiders. And there's a public boat ramp and the associated acreage next to it. And Beach Elementary School has space, which kind of provides a neighborhood park, particularly for that part of town, but also for others who are looking for tennis, as an example. And the conversation from the commissioner's email exchange about, it seems like 45 days now ago, prompted us to contact the facilities planner at the Calvert County School Board. And they're not there yet in terms of planning or designing, but they're going to be. They're seeking funding for that, and they have to have formal approval by the state before they can actually do the design stuff. They did the feasibility study, right, and that's what suggested they would actually have room to build the building. And the feasibility study actually showed that the building would have to be built in a way that the tennis courts where they are now could not be built, because there'd have to be a driveway coming off of Bayside Road, which actually is nice to have that entry off of Bayside Road. That could grant entry into a classic school building. But the recreational things would have to go to the side and rear. And but she's very much aware of the town's concerns, and it's just not the planning commission's concerns, as I I learned by surprise that the town administration was also concerned about the very same thing. And maybe someone contacted them separately, I don't know, but they were ready. Holly, town manager, informed about this topic before I even reached her. So, and they've been in contact. Of course, the mayor serves on the advisory committee with the county, so he's very much informed of what's happening there. But moving forward, we think about planning, and this is one of the recommendations, is that that site be developed with a neighborhood park function in mind, that it not be just school, but it be school and park, so that, and the town actually anticipates there might involve some participation by the town
From a funding
perspective in that. That project will ultimately come to you for your review as a site plan. So you have an opportunity to review it as decision makers too. And you can look for its conformance with the comprehensive plan, right?
Can you imagine telling the school board we don't approve their concept plan?
Well, that would be awkward, and and there is some sovereignty issues there.
I know.
But they
No.
expect to come to the planning commission.
Right. And again, and I think that the town staff, Holly, in discussions with the mayor, they are on board with being engaged in that design process when it gets funded, and and so it wasn't funded in 19. I'm not sure. I don't think it was even fully funded for design in 20 when I looked at the county school board funding profile. I think it's a multi-year design fund profile. But I could go back and look at that. But I do know Holly has been in contact and with the planning folks from the school board construction office, and that there will be discussions about some of the things that the town would desire in there, but there's also probably going to be a funding bill with that from what they indicated. And so again, I think there'll be more discussions over the next year or so about what that should be, and how, and what part the town might be responsible for, what part the school board has in their budget and things like that. So
Which is not unusual, because the actual funding formula has a line item for school, district, county, local.
yeah, it
state.
did.
So, I mean, it sort of anticipates.
Multi-agency funding. In a design like that, it's probably going to be a 2 year, knowing with all the state level reviews and things. I mean, it's probably a 2-year design effort. Even just to work, once they get a designer on board, it's probably a 2-year design for sure, with all the regulatory reviews they'll have. And so there'll be multiple opportunities, that I'm sure they will go through probably at least 3 or 4 design reviews as they phase through that. So we'll, as that starts, we'll make sure we stay in touch with them as far as when they award that design contract and everything, but it won't be for a while. I mean, the solicitation's not even out yet.
Okay. May I proceed?
Sure, sorry.
Okay, so there's a map that says existing parks in Chesapeake Beach. There's actually 2 maps that say that, but only one shows existing. So the first one, I just highlighted where in town the parks are, just so you can visually see it. And you can also get a sense of where the town is not particularly well served by parks. So, for instance, there's no neighborhood park north of 260, and then the middle, it's called the middle subdivision, north of 260, between 260 and North Beach, for instance. And apart from the elementary school, there's no park in the campgrounds and that traditional development area. Of course, there's the boardwalk and the like, but and if I may, if you switch to the next map, it also says existing parks, but it categorizes them as neighborhood park, community park, or natural resource park. And I also added a C-P community park at Veterans Park as well.
Can I just add that I think that we really need to add in some more tot lots in this community. It's just the fact that some of these communities where families live and we don't have tot lots, it just seems ridiculous. If you go back to where it has, let's see, I'm going back to your, where does it tell us how many tot lots we have? We have
One.
see, I think that, for example, that Bayview Hills, a lot of children around there, and boy, do they need a tot lot in that area. And I don't see any reason why we can't ask the homeowner association if we couldn't go in and provide a nice little neighborhood park in there.
Right.
I mean, that's exactly what we should be doing because, from somebody who's played on all the parks in the entire Calvert County, and I know my parks, we are just sorely under equipped, you might say, with things for not only teenagers but young kids as well. So I think we need to look at how many tot lots we have. One, and we need to find. Now there will be a tot lot at the school. There is. I mean, I have used that one, and that's okay. So I would say at least we've got a couple in this area, but I think we need a couple over in this area somewhere. And I would say Bayview Hills is one of them that one neighborhood that could really use it. I don't even know if Windward Keys has a tot lot or anything, but let's see. But I think we really need to, I don't know if I know there's a park committee and I wanted to join. I haven't been able to figure out when the meetings are, but we really should inquire with the park committee what their thoughts are as far as what their future plans are, what their ideas are. I know that council member, who's in charge of that park committee? Anyway, we could be asking the town council person who's in charge of the park committee what their ideas are and get them in here because they may have already approached Bayview Hills. They may have already looked at some of these other areas in the north area.
I'm not sure if they're a park committee or if they're solely focused on
just
Bayfront
Bayfront?
Park.
Are they?
I think it's just Bayfront Park.
Is
I
it
don't think
just
they're.
Maybe somebody else.
I don't think they're a broader
Oh.
park committee. I think it's solely focused on Bayfront Park.
Oh, okay. Well,
Not that they wouldn't be willing to expand their charter, but I think their charter focus was Bayfront Park.
I see. Okay, then I'm misinformed.
But I could certainly encourage him to
A whole nother
expand.
group and we don't
Certainly
even know
could
about it.
encourage him to expand his world.
Isn't there also, I mean, the tot lot that exists is in under a community association, homeowners association.
No,
right?
it's a town-owned lot. It's next to Kellam's Field.
Okay, but in these other areas, Richfield Station and such,
Yeah,
we
those
would
are
be
HOAs, yeah.
asking them, the homeowners association, to set aside some land or something for this purpose?
It would enhance
My question is, isn't
their-
this really a homeowners association issue in those areas that, like Windward's Key?
Well, there's open space associated with each of these neighborhoods to the extent that they'd like to have a public park there. There's probably space available for most of them, so that they could, walk to it. Now, in Bayview Hills, there is a small playground that's in that park that I described to you. It's not a tot lot in the sense that it's not just that small lot, but it's part of that park that's surrounded by the townhouses and has a little playground activity area and a bench. That might be what the community finds purely acceptable. But from the standard standpoint, when we apply the standards, we certainly do see typically communities have a lot more of these smaller tot lots. Just a small outlot in a subdivision, or the end of the street, there's a 2,000 square foot area with just a small place. That is a standard feature of a lot of.
None of that, very little of that was incorporated into Richfield Station. 20 years
No.
ago,
No. Nothing.
30 years ago.
Is that something that should have been incorporated in the site plan that the Planning and Zoning Commission approved?
Yes.
It was a different philosophy back 30 years ago. I mean,
Well, didn't we just approve a site plan in that area?
but it was already, it was,
Yeah.
the site plan was already, it was I think it was a modification to the site plan.
These plans were platted, they
Right.
were given preliminary plat approval. They're lots, in many cases already legal lots. And all these projects were approved some time ago. So the work that your planning commission, Jeff, mostly was involved in was revising or amending small tweaks or minor plat amendments, but the essence of the subdivisions had been approved,
And we haven't, in the
platted.
5 years I've been here, we haven't had any subdivision approval involvement other than,
We could have actually affected the design.
right. I mean, again, not saying that we can't always look for ways and again, use the comprehensive plan as an encouragement document, or look for opportunities, but those big opportunities were probably 30 years ago.
So would this be a modification to the plat,
With what the
the site plan, the plat?
Add a tot
Adding a
lot?
tot lot or whatever?
No.
Did it change the lot lines or change the use of a parcel or created a new parcel?
We'd have to,
It would be a change.
But you would be adding a tot lot in an already existing park area. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you take an area that isn't already a park and make that into a tot lot. I'm just saying that area in Bayview Hills has plenty of
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
plenty of area to put a tot lot in, right, even near the parking lot. There's just tons of space there. And the tot lot would be such a great community focal point in that whole neighborhood.
Are you
It's,
thinking of Richfield Station?
no, I'm thinking of the place where they've got soccer fields, and I've gone there and taken my kids down to the soccer. Yeah, they do soccer, and they also have baseball fields up there too.
I think you're thinking of the Highlands.
yeah, not
Is it
maybe.
off? What street is? Well, why isn't that on here then?
In the county. It could still be on here. I mean, it's a good point.
It's not
because
it's not town limits.
It's outside the town. But
What street is that on? Do you know? And
Andrews?
there you go. That is probably what
Yeah,
I'm
that's
thinking of
county
then.
property.
Okay, then that's the area where they have a lot of area that's available. But still, we're working with the county. We could still ask the county if that's the case. I mean, you'd have to work with the county and the HOA, but if that's still a HOA, and I think it is HOA over there.
It actually occurred to me, Commissioner, to add the parks in North Beach. Because, we
I use
are a
that.
small community.
I
the
use
two
that park
towns.
up there I use that park. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the reason I mentioned that one, Chris, was just one of the things a while ago when we first started this process was we wanted to not think about things in isolation of Chesapeake Beach because we're not in competition with North Beach. What we want to do is provide complementary services and there's some things that they do really well. I don't know that's in our best interest to try to compete with that head to head. Where there's a need, if there's a need, sure, create that additional capacity. If there's not a need, there may be other things that they don't provide that we could provide better, and make sure we understand that because we have a pretty localized population, and so I think it's how do we best serve the residents who are
Add
here,
bike paths.
and so
That's how we do it.
so I just think it's not so you're right. I think we should consider what's readily available and whether we feel that need or it's across some imaginary line at Neptune's, but we should we should look, there's certainly opportunities where we could do better in these categories within the beach town, within our beach town limits, and we should look for those opportunities. But let's not put one. Let's just think about it holistically, I guess, is what I'm.
Oh,
is
So
what I'm
on that
asking.
note, the Walkable Community Advisory Group has proposed bike paths.
Right, all right.
Hearing crickets about these bike paths, but I promise you, it is the new trend in planning.
Yeah.
It has caused economic development in cities all over the country, and we have a great spot for them. And we don't have a lot of land for parks, but every kid of every age loves to ride their bike. We can do this. We can put it,
52-year-old kid.
yeah, and a 46-year-old kid. It's great for health. It would be great to balance out what Chesapeake Beach offers as far as what type of person wants to come visit our town. I always see bikers on weekends.
Bicyclists? You mean bicyclists?
Yeah, cyclists, yeah.
As opposed to bikers.
So if we
I
make
think
it
it's
wide
bikers.
enough to accommodate their needs as well as, just recreational purposes, we're offering those people a nice long ride. They're going to go out to wherever they came from in the first place and talk about Chesapeake Beach and talk about how great it is, and what a great place to ride. And that is going to spur economic development. And in doing that, we will preserve our area as it has been for years as a recreational area and
A healthy recreation.
a healthy recreational,
Yeah, that's
exactly,
important.
and an area that honors natural participation. And outdoor participation.
Mhm.
And I think it's really important, given all the development that we're discussing and that's occurring, to balance that with projects that honor outdoor recreation. So I think we should talk more about my bike paths
I want to go back to my tot lots.
or our bike paths.
I think we've got a lot of work. We've got a lot of things
And
we need.
Chris, and I don't know, there's a whole county park committee that's working on the whole thing in Dunkirk and a bunch of different stuff. And so, I mean, while I hear talking to them about St. Andrews stuff, and again, that one worries me a little bit, honestly, just because I don't know. I don't know where the county would fall on that. And again, I think we probably have other opportunities that we can control inside our boundaries, and it might be, I don't know how we influence them, that we think there's a need up there other than their residents going to county planning stuff and county parks and rec meeting where they can be heard to lobby for their funding. I mean, there's part of me that says we should lobby for what we need in our town limits and not to
Yeah.
take
if
away
we
from
can-
them, because again, these are imaginary lines
Right, if we can-
these are imaginary
Right.
lines that exist.
If we built our bike paths,
So,
it would be possible, perhaps, maybe, that we could strike some kind of deal with them to where we hook them up to our bike paths and their parks become something more public. There's
and I think they are public there. It's
once
just
you connect
More
everything,
accessible.
everybody takes ownership of everything that they can connect to. And if they can't connect to it, they don't consider it theirs.
I think that's an important point is, as you said, we need to think of the entire area as something that we can incorporate. If bike paths are going to be fluid and move into other areas, we may want to look at whatever other areas that we can find to put in basketball courts and tot lots and whatever. And if it means that we have to go into the county area, we talk to the county and make I don't want to use the word quid pro quo, but I want to say some kind of a
Don't use that
negotiating. I want to say some kind of a negotiating thing where we can, hey, we'll offer some bike paths if you can offer some land for tot lots and things like that. But I think we just have a dearth of activity areas, and wherever we can put them. I was even thinking that area right in front of your house, Larry, that grassy area That
We
seems,
we've already talked about that being a resource conservation area, and that falls into the natural resource areas that you've talked about here, isn't it?
It is. And that's what we've talked about previously.
what is that area called? Is there a name for that area?
30th Street, 30th and Bayside.
These streets.
But it's
Also known as
beautiful.
Donovan's property.
Yeah.
Donovan's property.
Donovan.
It's the old Wesley Stennon's.
Wesley Stinnett, the old West.
Yeah, it used to be Wesley Stennon's restaurant.
Right, that's right.
Part of it, about half of it.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful little park area that's fairly underutilized, but we,
Well,
I think if,
It's private property. I mean,
but it is private
it's
property.
private property.
But could we not offer to buy that from whoever owns it right now?
So again, I just want to stay away from us making recommendations about buying property and things because we
Well,
don't.
we were told actually by a town council person to actually make that recommendation. I'm sorry, but I'm losing my voice. But we have been told that that's what we should include in this comprehensive plan. We need to purchase areas in order to, provide, more opportunities for recreation of sorts. So
I guess I would rather phrase it as these are areas that these are lands that we could consider doing other things with. And then if town council chose to proceed down that path, it's their decision of how aggressively they would want to go down that road. We could say, I feel more comfortable from a planning body saying, this is an area where there's an opportunity to create a natural resource conservation area. I'm less comfortable saying, go buy it. This is where we make value judgments as a town.
Mhm.
I would rather say this is an area that we could consider for resource conservation because of these things, and then let the council place value on how they do that is my personal feeling.
I think we've already voted on it becoming a resource conservation area, as I recall. So whether it becomes a park, that's another step, but
Mhm.
But Larry said, I do remember actually asking you specifically, is this what you mean? Type of thing. So I didn't list it here as a park for that very reason, but it would show up on our detailed maps as green, indicating resource conservation. Of course, the land across the street is largely going to be flooded, and the neighborhoods opposite the wetlands are experiencing that right now. I had a list of 8 points that could make up the skeleton of the plan for parks. I think some of them capture what has been said. First, develop Kellam's Field into a true community level park where water access is combined with traditional park amenities. I don't know right now what that park looks like, but I have some photographs to talk with you about as the last thing tonight. 2, create strong linkages between Kellam's Field and the middle subdivision so Kellam's can serve a neighborhood function too. And that means, for instance, that there's some unprogrammed space and go out there and play catch with your kids or something like that. The middle subdivision, that's the area, north of 260 from Bayside up to almost Cox Road, there has no park. There's no park, and I spent a lot of time looking at whether it's feasible to do a park there. It would require purchasing a few properties, and it's hard to introduce something like that into an existing community where all of a sudden they have to deal with noise impacts and the like. Not to mention that's the cost of doing it. But maybe it's more feasible to improve those, make strong linkages over 260, like we've talked about. It's through a redevelopment scheme that you would have a traffic calming on 260 coming in and make it more pedestrian friendly and green and trees and shrubs. So it could be like a parkway from the subdivision down over to Kellam. Collins Field that accommodated
In the
bikes.
form of a bridge.
That what?
I said in the form of a bridge.
In the form of a bridge. Okay.
Or a tunnel. It's high there. We could tunnel on there.
Third, ensure redevelopment of Beach Elementary provides an accessible neighborhood park function. Not only that, but it could actually be connected into the Chesapeake Railway Trail too. A spur could come off of that because you're really not far.
Didn't you
as the crow
say that?
flies.
Didn't you say there was some of the feasibility stuff showed some sort of a pathway down to
Yes.
back to that backside of Fishing Creek?
Yes.
So again, I think that's something we should continue to look for as they get into the design. I think that's something we would want to keep an eye out for, because I think that link would be valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Any way that we can include on there to retain the current, I want to call the tennis courts a major function, a major accessory to the park. I mean, the problem is if you just say accessible neighborhood park function, that could just mean a tot lot with a backstop, and they could redevelop the tennis courts into just grassy area. So I'm concerned that we need to be more specific and include in there retaining the tennis courts.
Good with everybody? Mention tennis courts.
I agree.
Okay.
You also want to say basketball courts.
There are basketball courts if I'm recalling, in the park, in the tot lot area. Seems like there are some basketball courts over there. But typically schools have basketball courts, but I mean, we could certainly specify basketball courts.
There's none outside anywhere in.
They aren't
I'm
outside?
trying to picture beach.
No, I mean,
that area.
other than there, what I was gonna say is like at the tot lot, and when you said they're usually in a school, we have Northeast Community Center, but it is valuable, I think, to have a multi-function asphalt surface, whether it's
Absolutely.
tennis that you could, sometimes they'll
Yeah.
put basketball hoops on the end of a tennis thing. I mean, I think I might suggest as you work that wording, I might suggest examples of what might be desirable to include. And not, again, they're going to make some calls, and again, some of it's going to come to funding and some stuff like that. And so I think, I think we could say, it's important to retain some sort of outdoor athletic courts, for example, tennis courts, basketball, and phrase it.
I think
in
you're
some
giving them
manner.
too much leeway, and I think if you're not specific on what our city needs are, we're going to lose them. And I think, I've seen that before where the county says, oh, well, they don't really need this, or and they just kind of like throw up in the air whatever falls down. Oh, we really need basketball. So instead of the tennis courts, we'll have I really want basketball courts too, but I really think if you want to keep the tennis courts, you have to retain the tennis courts. And we don't have any other tennis courts. I really think we have to keep at least 2 tennis courts in the town, especially since pickleball is so big right now. You can use one of the courts for pickleball if you needed to, but we don't have any facility for pickleball either.
And they
So-
are used for tennis courts on a nightly basis.
Oh yeah, I use them. I can walk down there and use them, but and they're even lighted, which is impressive. So I personally feel you need to be specific and not give them any leeway and say this is what our city needs, and we expect that they are retained in the planning process.
So they may, and the only reason I say that is they may then say, if you want it so bad, town council pony up the tennis court piece of that. And so we can say as a planning body, it's not solely,
Well, I think the
County
town has
functions and
got to
things.
commit to that because there's no other place in this entire town to put tennis courts or pickleball courts, or even, if you want to
There
use
are
it for skating.
pickleball courts at North Beach.
Well, in North Beach, there is in the senior area, I think, the senior center. I mean, I don't think kids or, young adults feel like going over there to play tennis but anyway, the point is we don't have any tennis courts for the youth to go and play tennis in this entire town, which I think is a shame. You have to go out 8 miles down to Dunkirk. But I think you have to be specific or you will lose it. That's my feeling. And I know how these, these schools work.
I know, and I've read all the letters to the editor about the courts they lost at Northern, who has
Exactly.
a high school tennis team, and so
Exactly. If you're
we
not,
can say that, and it's going to come up to who's going to pony up the funds for it.
or they might just be good Joes
So
and say,
when
"Oh, the
Northern
town needs
site
this."
plan was
Okay.
made was more during the recession, and people have a lot more money now. So I think that you ask for whatever you want.
Yeah, you have to
And
definitely
if you're
ask for it.
told no, then you're told no, but you don't not ask for it.
Yeah, and they're there already, so if they can build around it, that's what they do. Sometimes they really like to work with the city and they go, that is a nice asset and we are community minded and okay, we'll leave it. So, if you say this is what we need, they sometimes will just say, fine, go ahead and we'll retain those. And hopefully because they are a school, they will also have basketball as well. But that is a significantly major community asset for us. And we've got to use that as much as we can, since we're not going to ask for purchasing property or whatever. We've got to use that school, in my opinion. So I say, be specific and ask for it. Thank you. I'm glad somebody agrees with me. Well, I get all these complaints that there's not enough things for teenagers to do in this town. There just aren't. When I was a teenager, I played tennis. I mean, that's what I did for, all the way through college, all the way through an adulthood. And it's an alternative to those who want to play basketball. I mean, what else can we do? But we need to provide more outdoor activities for young adults and teenagers. And not everybody plays basketball. Anyway, okay.
I think I'm going to throw in tennis courts.
Yes.
I'm persuaded.
I will insist.
So when next time you see it come
I will
back to you,
insist.
I'll say tennis
all
courts.
my
If
initiatives.
you guys want to strike it, you can. Four, create mini parks. And I said, look to, pocket parks, look to street ending bayfront locations too for something like this. And, a lot of these streets that lead to the water are quite wide. Our rights of way are wide. They could be downsized a little bit. They could end short of the water and provide some type of amenity there at the edge.
And floods. Yeah, I'm not saying you can't put one there, but I'll tell you, it's usually wet.
But there are also opportunities throughout the town for small pocket parks. We only have to open our eyes. There are all kinds of small parcels. There's some that have pretty neat views. If you're on Cox Road and you're coming around before you connect with 260 again, get out of your car and look over, you see this expansive view. Maybe the towns would be interested in acquiring something like that as a vista, scenic vista park or something. It's a remarkable view that is unique to that section of town that not everybody sees. And there are pieces
where
like that.
exactly are you talking about?
About 400 feet
Away from the substation,
yeah,
just
yeah,
west
right
of the
around the bend.
substation on Cox Road there.
It's
Back
very, very high. The elevation's very high, and
Yeah,
after that,
yeah.
it drops
Upstate,
down.
like Subway, like,
at the substation, the transformer,
oh,
A
where
lot of that
Cox
land is
ties back into
undeveloped, too.
260.
There's nothing there.
gotcha.
If you back up from there on your way to Bayview Hills, there's some little opening. I think that's the vista you're talking
Right,
about there.
Right. The best time is spring or winter to see through. But
On the street ending bayfront locations for a tot lot, some might want to look at that closely, whether you want little
For
children
safety.
playing on the riprap
right.
water.
Yeah.
With adult supervision, it's probably fine,
Even,
but
even with
are you always
adult
gonna have
supervision,
them?
I remember 2 trips to the hospital.
Well, I'm not. In my vision, limited vision, I didn't imagine people playing on the rocks of the shoreline there, the revetment. I would imagine some investment in structure or the green space before you got to that. Not necessarily a tot lot either, but just a
Benches or some
passive type
trees or
of
something.
park space that folks may want to, particularly in the neighborhood.
Living
where
next to homes with small children over on the bay there, I see a lot of little children playing on
on the rocks. Yeah.
It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
Every year,
Really.
you would have a kid go in the bay.
They go in, huh?
On July 3rd, I mean, I always, for like 4 years in a row, we had somebody go in 2 trips to the hospital.
Your kids?
Well, twice it was mine.
Number 5.
How did I guess?
Number 5, this follows up on conversation that the deliberation the Planning Commission had, I guess, months ago. Develop a recreational, cultural pier through the expansion of Veterans Park, so that a Veterans Park would be expanded out into the water on the pier. And that is sort of the way of building historically in Chesapeake Beach. A lot of the recreational amenities happened out beyond the shoreline, on the water's edge. The critical area law has recently been amended, and towns can opt to allow non-water dependent structures on piers now. That was passed.
Say that again?
Non-water dependent structures. So something that doesn't require a waterfront location can now be built on the waterfront.
like
Or
a
pier.
restaurant or a store.
Ferris wheel.
Or a museum, or even a park, we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. Expand Bayside Park into the adjoining natural heritage area. Talked about that, and that's that large parcel, and DNR wants to see it preserved. And a park is a great use of that property. In that it protects that area for its unique
That require
vegetation.
the town to acquire.
possibly, or require
I
the right to use
support,
it.
but-
Right? Yeah. Well, not necessarily south of the town's border, but south of Bayside Park.
Yeah.
Develop community parks into major amenities for the town. And when I say community parks, what I'm really referring to is Kelmus Field, but also the pier. In other words, let's not do it halfway. If the town's going to commit to doing a park in either of these locations and going through the process of sorting out ownership and all that, let that be a major statement for future generations of a major park, a major attraction that reads like it belongs in Chesapeake Beach. A place has always been a destination locale, rather than sort of, all we have is a small amount of funding. Let's just make it a grass area or a ball field. Maybe package a plan, even if it takes multiple years to do, but do something that has a wow factor.
That I agree with, because my basic philosophy is if it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing.
I also agree with that.
The last thing before we get to the last page is amend zoning and subdivision regulations and require parkland dedication and improvements. That's even for projects that might be apartments or condos or something. There should be a commitment to the open space. We have so little open space, and you can go through every single project that's been developed. Very few have actually provided any usable open space. But that's not the case in other jurisdictions. You can simply require open space. But that means the zoning ordinance has to have some standards. You have to specify that, and you have to be clear about what it is. And developers can't, help make up the deficiencies that exist already. It's not their job. But they can provide park benefits and open space benefits for the new residents that come into their communities. And by that, we can actually begin thinking about how the whole system works together. Okay. So,
On that subject, requiring developers to allocate so much space for recreation or whatever, how, do we require developers to allocate so much parking space? X amount of parking space for
In the-
build?
That's a
Yeah.
good point coming up because we're running out of parking space in our town.
You mean parking for their residents? Parking?
Yeah,
Parking
well, for the residents, visitors, whatever.
Yes, there's a number of parking spaces for residents and overflow for multifamily projects. Yes.
I just didn't know what, I don't know the rule.
And I think it's based on single family, townhouse.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
1.5 for townhouse, 2 for single family, and then there's a overflow calculation that provides some measure of increased
Bye,
parking.
Teresa. Did you want to speak?
So many communities require 1,000 square feet of open space per dwelling unit. Some have gotten away from that, and I think they're smart to do that, and are thinking more about amenities, the amenities that are actually provided, because sometimes just providing space that never gets used is not the way to go. But to provide amenities that could actually benefit the entire community might be a better approach. Other communities will require, if it's not feasible to do the space on your lot, you pay a fee in lieu, or you actually invest in making some other park area more, you satisfy your
Enhanced.
demand by improving something else in your service area, not on the other side of town, but within your neighborhood. And I think that's a fantastic way to go moving forward for the town. In fact, I would hope that you would think about making that a requirement of any future development that might come across, even if we don't have standards yet. We take time to write the standards, because or else we lose these opportunities. And you see 20 years would have been radically different had those standards been in place. So the last thing then is let's go to the last page. I mentioned about the community parks, and Commissioner Brown's "it's worth doing, it's worth overdoing" sentiment. I included some photographs here, and first one would be Veterans Community Park in Pier. Charlie had a lot of insights about this and thought about how it would generate economic development strategies at the intersection and promote smart development, cafes and the like. I think it would. These may be oversized for the town and not meant to be. I don't intend to signal to you that this is the project, but I want to signal a certain vision, one that has a recreational resource and maybe even something cultural too. Like the first image shows broad, basically boardwalk leading to some type of museum or amenity out on the edge. Maybe it's a place where musical performances can take place, or an art gallery or something. And then the one to the right is mostly dedicated to green space, an open space. And then the one on the bottom that's lit up at night, that is actually in Long Beach, California, that's a Veterans Memorial Pier. Couldn't have thought about a better term, and given that this idea would potentially expand Veterans Park, and their community actually did that. And it's not as grandiose as the other two, but it certainly has its architectural interest, and it provides outdoor amenities. There's no green space on it per se, but there's walking. I think they have a small area for fishing. They actually do. They have fishing on the pier. And so it's 3 images that can capture a vision for that area. The other one is Kellum's Field, and that's on the bottom. So if it's Kellum's Field becomes Kellum's Community Park, and we're trying to manage sea level rise, you have to begin thinking about how that area accommodates water. You might realize that the spoil site, the dredge spoil site, is on the west side of it. And beyond that is wetlands, marsh, and open water. So Kellum's Field, when you think about that additional town property, becomes much bigger. and becomes quite an extensive waterfront location. It's quite remarkable when you sort of think about, well, take away the dredge spoil sites function and think about it as something that the town could actually put to use in a more productive way. Dredge spoil doesn't have to be dumped in the town. Or it could be dumped in the town in a way to create the berms and the landscaping necessary to create the livable space in the future. So, there's a lot of interesting parts that could come together and make Kellums Field just fantastic. And I would suggest that this be the subject of a major planning effort at some point. I mean, get real qualified designers, park designers, and engineers to really come up. Maybe even a design competition would be fantastic for the town to do.
Wow.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
And creative use of the dredge spoils would be an interesting subject of that too.
You have the Fishing Creek Marina there, which is, I think,
Private.
an essential function for the town. I mean, we are a waterfront coastal community. And then you have the community functions like the water park and the Northeast Community Center, each threatened by sea level rise, without a doubt. The boat ramp is underwater in 10 years. It's already, and the driveway leading to it is threatened. So all of that has to be reimagined at some point. We think longer term. But then we have all that surface parking. Some of it's dedicated for boat parking for the boat ramp. Others is just regular car parking. And I think there's more asphalt out there than green space.
There is, for
And
sure.
it doesn't need to be that way. In fact, that's counter to anything you'd want to do in the critical area in the floodplain. So there's a great canvas out there to paint something remarkable on.
That's only if we can purchase or have use of this ourselves as a town, right?
Well, the town owns most of the property. The town and the county have an agreement on the use of Kellums Field, but the town owns most of Kellums Field. The county owns most of the parking.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Then the private developer owns land adjoining it and wrapping around it near the Fishing Creek Marina associated with that. And the county owns Northeast Community Center, right?
County owns that?
Oh, the
That's what I
county
thought.
owns that.
County facility. It's a county
Oh,
facility.
it's a county facility.
It's not a town facility.
Oh,
But the
That's
water park
staffed
is
by
town.
Coward County Parks and Rec.
oh, that explains it. Okay. All
The
right.
beauty of this is, of course, you have the housing authority too, which is another quasi-public, essentially, agency, even though I think there's some private investment in that. But you really have 4 property owners in this vast center part of town. And I would imagine 4 property owners could probably work out a mutually beneficial arrangement that supports the marina, creates this green space, that deals with sea level rise, protects the town, and creates a town center feel that would mostly be concentrated up here. I think this might be one of the most interesting things that comes out of this planning process.
When you talk spoils, are you talking just from dredging Fishing Creek or where else?
Yes, just Fishing Creek, just the channel.
And there's a huge amount of spoils that, they're rebuilding Poplar Island out there and others available, which could build the island that's there. Great park.
Yeah, and I'm sure John Bacon would have visions of, you could have a great educational tie to some sort of a thing in
I was
that
thinking
park
along
with
those
the, with
same
the
lines.
sea box and everything. I mean, that, again, as we have a really nice educational display on the boardwalk or pier or whatever we call that thing.
Mhm.
I can't
Right.
get my words right tonight,
Right.
but
The railway trail.
yeah, and so but John, and with the help of the town and Seabox and everything, I mean, it's a really it's a great,
Oh, it's beautiful.
that I think
Beautiful.
everybody is a fan of that. And I think,
Oh,
again, there's probably opportunities as we look at this to create some of that education,
Yeah, and
draw
that's a great way
to that.
sell
And
it.
there's opportunities there that we should always keep in mind when we're considering the recreational opportunities and how we what's in the realm of possible.
And I think the pier idea, which of course, I love, should enhance the historical aspects of this town, incorporate some of the, the old carousel idea, bring back some of that onto the pier so that you, again, have an educational aspect as well as a cultural aspect on that pier. So, again, one thing I don't want to lose in this town that is easy to lose is the historical aspects. And it's got great history. So that would be my addition to that pier idea, is to keep it historically relevant as well.
The only thing I would say about the pier is I don't think the appropriate place is Veterans Park. I think it would be more the boardwalk, closer to Rod and Reel where it was before.
Are you saying move the Veterans Park?
No, I'm
Veterans
saying
Memorial?
I think the Veterans Park, like when you come into Chesapeake Beach,
Mhm.
I think it's a very elegant view. I think you come into Chesapeake Beach and you see the flag and you see the bay and that's all you see. And I like the simplicity of that. And I also think that's a very crowded area anyways. So I wouldn't want to put too many people there because it's right at an intersection. It's very crowded. So there's not a lot of space to fan out there. Where there is down the way on the Brownies Beach Boardwalk. Now, those people would probably not like that idea. But maybe even by Mama Lucia's up here out that way would help that business. That area has other commercial development around it that might be more appropriate there. But I really like the simplicity of Veterans Park, the way that the bay frames the flag, and it's very simple. But I like the idea of the pier.
I mean, I guess the question is, if you want a pier, are there good locations other than that particular location? I don't know. I mean, maybe down by Brownies Beach at the other end, if we do purchase or acquire some more land, maybe there would be an area down there. I don't know.
If you did it there, the pier is purely a sort of outdoor recreational fishing or something like that.
Right. It wouldn't be the
It's not
More
economic.
of a design,
It wouldn't be the
urban,
Yeah, it wouldn't be
development
it wouldn't be
strategy.
the urban center situation, which would be my vision of it. It would be kind of like the culmination of where all the walkable areas would come to. I mean, that's where your goal would be to end up there, as like the community center, you might say. But
Would have to be completely reimagined and redesigned.
Right.
Established part of town that has a lot of reverence, and any change to that would require a lot of work with the
Consultation.
community and consultation. Yeah, you know about that.
I do.
Yeah, but it's conceivable that it could be made even better. I always hold up open the possibility that
You had at the end of the pier or whatever, the flag, and I mean, it depends on the design, how
yeah,
it
it
would,
depends
how
on
it
the
would
design
look.
of
And
the whole
I
area.
don't suspect we're gonna design it at this commission.
No, I don't
Probably
think
true.
so. We may not see
I
the day.
mean,
we have a few
but-
hours.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're not done yet.
I think some of those are good. Again, seeing some kind of grand other examples, at least it whets your appetite and makes you think beyond what might be in our brain. And so it is interesting what other locations have done, and just it takes some really creative and visionary people to put some of that out there for us to explore. And I think it's always important to not take stuff off the table too early when you're envisioning that long range growth and trying to create the framework of where we might go, because it will certainly evolve, and let it have enough room to kind of have that grand vision, because you don't know where it might lead to. But I think it's an interesting kind of a good overview for us to consider from a planning body of what resources in the parks category we have. And it's good to talk about maybe some of the things we think we want to make sure we protect of the attractions and activities we have in the parks today. So I think that's all good. You'll probably go make some more runs at this a little bit, and
Yeah, and develop it, write it up.
yeah.
One
Talk
of
to
the
Melissa.
deficiencies, what we've looked at is the Chesapeake Beach Boardwalk. There's no parking. I mean, it's very difficult to get to, and there needs to be some change if we want the public to use that boardwalk more than it is now.
I mean, we fight it at Brownies
That's a good
Beach.
point.
What was that, Jeff?
I mean, either end of it, it's limited depending on the time of year. I mean,
Oh, it's
clearly
really
this
that-
time of year, it's easy to park at Brownies Beach and go out on the boardwalk if you want to start at that end and do stuff. And again, I don't know where people come from, but if you're starting at the north side of the boardwalk, that's non-existent.
Yeah, if you're a resident and you want to walk down the boardwalk to Brownies Beach,
You got a mile, I got a half mile. I mean, it's a,
Yet there is open space nearby as part of the Chesapeake Station community, part of the HOA open spaces. Pretty expansive just north of there, within a very short walking distance to the trailhead to the boardwalk.
Where's that at? What do you mean by that?
The
kind of a
trailhead,
right. Is that where it drops down and you got a pretty steep slope rolling
well,
before you come back
Chesapeake
up?
Station community, behind the Rollins.
Yeah?
Behind it, there's quite a bit of green open space, and
Yeah, but they really warn you to stay out. It's for, local residents.
well, I know. I'm just saying, but
Oh.
maybe there's an opportunity there in the future to acquire some of that space that's accessible by the road for pull-in parking. Maybe it's something that the town could obtain through coordination and cooperation with the community association. But I was just thinking, right, that might be an opportunity.
Yeah.
You immediately.
It is a challenge. I agree with you, Larry.
and it seems to me the Walkable Communities Group had some engagement on that issue, and I forget exactly what they had planned, but there was some connections that they had made for the boardwalk to the rest of the community.
Well, right now, you could probably use the Rod and Reels parking lot. Their 4-story parking lot to actually park and then walk up C Street and then down. I mean, you could do that now until it's not paid parking yet.
I think even if we did,
The parking structure is what I'm talking about.
Hey, Laura.
even if we did medians and shoulders that maybe accommodated more parking, and like those things that North Beach did, the I don't know what they're called. There's traffic calming,
The
tree
traffic calming.
planters or whatever,
Mhm.
on the side of that. So you have the side of the road, the road's wide. You have,
Right.
medians in the middle, Old Bayside Road, south from Brownies Beach. You have that long road. You have a space that's the rest of the park that we don't own yet. You have a
Yeah.
space that's like drainage area for Chesapeake Village. I don't think Chesapeake Village would be very happy if we made the entire, like a big
Yeah.
parking lot in there.
I
They'd
don't know.
probably be not happy about that. But I think they do get annoyed when everybody just parks on Chesapeake Village Boulevard anyways. So if it was just kind of the shoulder, with the traffic calming planters, so that there were a few spaces along that way, and then you had the medians in the road so that people could safely cross. That's possible. Very expensive, but if Chesapeake Beach becomes more frequented, something will need to be done about all of that.
I talked with Melissa, who's the consultant working on the walkability plan.
And I also haven't, so I can't wait
But
to see her plan.
But I'm switching now into circulation road improvements, which will also include trails and sidewalks. So now's the time for interface. So
Okay.
yeah, it'll happen, and hopefully be able to report to you, or she will, on her findings.
Do we have any other comments about park stuff that we want to address before? I mean, we'll revisit this. Chris will I think this was just to get the discussion going tonight. He's going to develop this some more. We'll continue to talk, we'll talk about that again. So this isn't the last time we'll talk about parks, but if you have anything else you want to have Chris take away tonight, I think we had a pretty good conversation though.
I mean, I think the only concern I have is that we haven't really determined what more we need. And I think we need a lot more. I mean, we haven't really said we need 3 more of these, we need 2 more. We haven't really identified what exactly we need. And I think we really need to be more precise, because I don't think the town council will know. They're waiting for us to give them advice. And I think we need to indicate that we need more tot lots, at least 3 more tot lots. I would say north of 261, we need at least 3 up in that area. I mean, there are none, as we have seen. We've got at least this little one here near Kellum, and we got the school, but this area has nothing. So I think we need to specifically say that we need to have at least 2 or 3 more tot lot areas. And I mean, they can find the area. I mean, they can find the location, or we can convene some kind of a committee to determine what the areas would be. But I think that needs to be specified in there, that we need more tot lots. I think it would be nice if we could have a tot lot and maybe like a half-court basketball somewhere in that area too. I mean, I'm getting complaints from people I don't even know saying we need things for our teenagers. We have nothing for the teenagers around here. I understand that's a big problem. There's not even any place to fish. There's really nothing for them. I mean, if we're just going to be a total gambling, or maybe boating, okay, fine. But we've got a lot of families now, so we really do have to think about it. I know I got a question about the new development up here off of Cox. Does that have any park facility attached to it at all? Nothing. There's nothing up there. Okay. Then it's more critical than I thought. We really do need to have at least 3, I would say, tot lots up there.
Glad you brought that up. I didn't actually specify a number. I just said we need more.
Yeah,
But
can't do
I
that.
do prefer to be more specific.
Yes.
So maybe in the second draft, I'll be more location specific, and rather than saying tot lots, can we just use mini parks that could be a tot lot? Because not everything is a tot lot in the sense that it's for kids. Sometimes little kids, which would mean
Right.
I would like the
Seniors
term
are a big
multi-age
part of our
park.
community.
Yeah, it could be multi-age
Yeah,
park. It
so-
could be anything, but it's an active park, not just a passive park. And there are some wonderful new pieces of equipment that multiple ages can now use, zip lines and whatnot, that are just, they're quite innovative, and climbing walls, whatever. But, all ages can use them basically. So I agree. It should be multi-age recreational areas.
I don't think I could use a climbing wall.
Huh?
I appreciate the vote
Probably
of confidence,
couldn't
but I don't think I can use a climbing wall.
Well, you should see my son-in-laws. Boy, they can get up there pretty high. They can do it pretty well. So, but yeah, if you can be more specific, that'd be great.
Or do you have any other comments?
No, I'm happy we're talking about parks. I'm happy with the recommendation to go big with in key areas of our parks. So that makes me happy. I think if we identify those areas, then that will help us with grants. So we should research, the grants that we might be going for and make sure our wording matches those grants, so that when we put them in the comprehensive plan, we can get the money to make them.
I like the idea of the island park at the end of Veterans, off Veterans Park. I hope we get to the walkable communities issues and the paths that they've outlined. I think maybe putting some of these parks, those parks near or on those pathways would be useful to the community, adults and children and teenagers. I believe the community center is a place for teenagers to activities. So they do, I think they do have probably more than some communities have, but nonetheless, more would be better.
Always. I've also heard they have repair needs at that facility too. The
Oh, I'm sure
basketball
they do.
floors apparently aren't even anymore, so I've had complaints about that as well. But as now we know it's a county facility, because we have to go to the county about that.
It doesn't appear we have any other. Teresa didn't stay for public comment period, but I may run into her at Roland soon. So I'll make sure if she had any comments, she gives them to me. If there aren't any other public comments, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move adjournment.
Second,
I'll second it
Nobody
favor,
wants,
say
nobody
aye.
wants to leave.
reluctantly.
They want to keep it going.
Aye.
The ayes have it. The meeting for November 13th is adjourned. Thank you. On a regular schedule?